In the summer of 476 AD, the most powerful empire in human history, an empire that had ruled the known world for over 1,000 years, ended. Not with a great battle, not with a final siege, not with fire raining from the sky. It ended with a paperwork handover. A teenage emperor handed his crown to a barbarian general, walked out of his palace, and was never heard from again. No one panicked. No one fought back. The senators went home. The soldiers shrugged. The priests kept their schedules. How does the greatest empire in history simply stop? And why did no one, not a single person, try to save it? To understand how Rome fell, you have to understand what Rome actually was. Not the marble you see in museums, not the sandals and togas of movies, the real Rome. At its peak, Rome controlled 4 million square kilometers of territory. 60 million people, roughly 1/5 of all humans alive, lived inside its borders. It built roads that are still in use today, aqueducts that moved water 60 miles without a single pump, a legal system that forms the backbone of modern law in over 50 countries. Rome wasn't just an empire, it was the operating system of the ancient world. But every operating system has a breaking point, and Rome's began long before that summer night in 476 AD. It began with a crack so small that almost everyone missed it. By the 4th century, Rome had a problem it refused to admit. Its own citizens no longer wanted to fight for it. The legions that had conquered Gaul, crushed Carthage, and held the Rhine, those legions were gone. In their place, Rome was paying barbarian soldiers, Goths, Vandals, Huns, to defend its borders. These men had no loyalty to Rome. They had loyalty to their paycheck. And when the paychecks started bouncing, which they did, often, as Rome's economy rotted from within, those soldiers didn't fight harder. They changed sides. In the last 100 years of the Western Roman Empire, there were over 20 emperors. Most of them lasted less than 2 years. Several lasted months. One lasted 11 days. These weren't leaders. They were puppets. Real power had shifted to the military commanders, men like Stilicho, like Aetius, like Odoacer, who made and unmade emperors the way a chess player moves pieces. By the time Romulus Augustulus sat on the throne in 475 AD, the title Emperor of Rome meant almost nothing. He was 16 years old, installed by his own father, and would be removed within a year by the very general his father had betrayed. Rome's economy ran on conquest. New territories meant new slaves, new tax revenue, new resources. But Rome had stopped conquering, and an empire that can't expand starts consuming itself. Taxes became so brutal that farmers abandoned their land rather than pay them. The currency was debased so aggressively, emperors mixing more and more cheap metal into silver coins, that merchants stopped accepting it. Trade froze. Cities shrank. The great roads fell into disrepair because no one would fund the maintenance. Rome was eating its own foundation. Here's what most people get wrong about the fall of Rome. Rome didn't end in 476 AD. Half of it did. The Eastern Roman Empire, based in Constantinople, survived for another 1,000 years. It was still calling itself Rome when Christopher Columbus was a child. The East was richer, more urbanized, better positioned geographically, and had stronger leadership. The West had none of those things. When the pressure came, the East bent. The West broke. This is the part history books skip. By 476 AD, most people living in the Western Roman Empire weren't mourning its collapse. They were relieved. The tax burden had been unbearable for generations. The government was corrupt and distant. The military terrorized the same citizens it was supposed to protect. For the average farmer in Gaul, or the merchant in Hispania, barbarian rule wasn't a nightmare. It was a change of management, and sometimes it was better. Rome didn't fall because it was attacked from outside. It fell because it had already been abandoned from within. September 4th, 476 AD, Ravenna, Italy, the last seat of the Western Roman Emperor. Odoacer, a Germanic general who had served Rome his entire life, walked into the palace with his soldiers. Not to fight, to collect. Romulus Augustulus, 16 years old, the last emperor of the Western Roman Empire, handed over his imperial regalia, the crown, the robe, the symbols of 1,000 years of Roman power, and signed his own abdication. Odoacer chose not to execute him. He exiled him to a villa in southern Italy and paid him a pension. The Roman Senate sent a letter to the Eastern Emperor in Constantinople. The letter said simply that the West no longer needed an emperor, that Odoacer was sufficient to handle things. And that was it. No battle, no fire, no final stand on the walls of Rome. The greatest empire in history ended with a letter and a pension check. Somewhere in a villa in Campania, a 16-year-old boy who had been emperor for less than a year watched the sun set over the Mediterranean. History does not record what he thought. It rarely records what the losers thought. That's why we're here. So why does this matter? Why should anyone care about an empire that collapsed 1,500 years ago? Because Rome isn't just history. It's a warning that every civilization has ignored since. Rome didn't fall to an enemy stronger than it. It fell to its own indifference, to a military it outsourced, to a currency it debased, to a government so corrupt and so distant that its own people stopped believing in it. Every empire that has fallen since has made the same 5 mistakes. Every single one. And every empire that fell made them slowly, over decades, over generations, until one quiet September night, somebody handed over the crown, and no one tried to stop them. The question isn't how Rome fell. The question is, who's making those same mistakes right now, and whether anyone will notice before the next September 4th. Romulus Augustulus watched the sun go down from his exile villa that night. He didn't know it yet, but this was the last day.